Who are the top three candidates to take the opening at UCF? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me is the guy with the first and the last word from the Last Word on Sports, Andrew Glukov. Andrew, it's time. It is coaching search time. Now, we've got to get into it. You dropped an article recently on who you think the top three candidates are, and I want to get into it. So without further ado, who's candidate number one, man? Who is UCF looking at for this job?
Well, I gave a few more than three, but let's narrow down the field a little bit to the guys who I think are the top three. My top three, and you could show the first picture up, is none other than Ryan Silverfield from University of Memphis. Silverfield is a guy who actually has a connection to UCF. He was a one-time graduate assistant in 2006 and 2007, so he does know the school. And he's also been an opposing coach at Memphis for some time, since the end of the 2019 season. This is a good candidate. He's not expensive. And, he's done well. It's taken him a little bit to get Memphis rolling, but the last two seasons have had over 10 wins each. He's an excellent candidate. He's one of my top three. Kind of a newer guy to this kind of circle. He was not on my radar the last time UCF was looking for a coach.
Silverfield is 41-21 as a college coach, 3-1 so far at bowl games at Memphis. This is a guy who's young in his career. He's only 44. So by coaching standards, that's pretty young for a head coach.
Yeah, he's young. He's worked his way up, and that one loss, he was the interim coach in the Cotton Bowl against Penn State. So, I mean, that was his first game as a head coach. He was the interim at the time, trial by fire. While it still stays on the record, I don't really count that against him, but, he's organically grown this program. He's shown a loyalty that I think that's something that UCF fans are looking for. Here's the truth. 95% of schools are stepping stone schools, and UCF's no different. A young up-and-comer, there is a chance you do well, you move on. The guys two previous, Scott Frost and Josh Heupel. Granted, their careers went in opposite directions after the elevated hire, but a larger school with deeper pockets comes and poaches it. That's the nature of the beast. So UCF now, as a power conference school, can look to their former conference mate as a step below and give them that. Now they can become the poachers.
It's interesting, right? Memphis is still in the American Athletic Conference. And if you're UCF, do you believe you become the program where you can attract a big name head coach from another program? Is that how they felt when they got Gus to come to UCF? I remember seeing a lot of UCF fans on Twitter and other social media platforms say, hey, you guys took him for granted. He's going to do well here. He's gone now. Is this the same, or is this just where UCF has to be in terms of their coaching search?
I think it's different, because look when Gus Malzahn joined UCF. It's 2021. The NIL thing was just starting. The dynamics of how a head coach has to operate was just starting to change, the early onsets. So that the first couple seasons were not bad. By 2023, the dynamics of what a head coach has to do changed dramatically, to the point Nick Saban retired. He quit. Chip Kelly left to become an offensive coordinator because he didn't enjoy this new head coaching requirements. And it became very obvious Gus Malzahn was downright miserable, and he knew UCF couldn't afford to fire him. So super agent Jimmy Sexton to the rescue and put something together for him to be able to do what he wants to do. And he didn't have to worry about the money. So in UCF's case now, you've got a guy like Silverfield who's been dealing with this for as long as Gus has, and he's still balancing things. That's the thing they have to look for. Guys who are current head coaches right now that are able to balance that new requirement of being kind of a CEO as well as being head coach.
Look, before we get into our next candidate, let's have a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, Andrew. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play even easier. Look, this is how it works. Game Time Picks makes it easy to save. I love saving money. Do you love saving money? In this economy, you got to love saving money.
Who doesn't?
Well, they have all-in pricing, which means no extra fees at checkout. And I think that should be a rallying cry for the next presidential elections. No extra fees to check out. You get panoramic seat views so you can know where you're sitting. They have a low price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for your $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. All right, Andrew. Silverfield from Memphis was the first guy on your list as the most likely. These aren't the only three, but these are the three most likely you think. Who you got second?
Number 2 is John Sumrall from Tulane, head coach there. And I actually think he's the least likely because North Carolina is just absolutely enamored with him. But I mean, he's an excellent pick. He had a couple of really good run. He had a really good run with Troy in the Sun Belt, 32-7 overall record, has 2 Sun Belt Conference championships, and his Tulane Green Wave are in a conference championship Saturday against Army. So the guy knows how to win, and that's why he's so popular. Sure, he hasn't been in Tulane very long, but that's okay. And he also has a slight connection to UCF. He has coached against UCF as defensive coordinator of Tulane back in 2014. So he has been to the school before. It's not like UCF's completely foreign to him. Just slight bit of exposure, but that could be enough to tip the scales. But I think he would be a really interesting candidate himself. But I just think North Carolina got a head start when they announced that, Mac Brown was going to be gone. This was the number 1 candidate from the get-go, and I think they've been talking to him for quite a while. I don't know if UCF's going to, crack that nut, but you know what? He would be an excellent pickup.
Yeah, another candidate from the American Athletic Conference. You mentioned that he is at Tulane. Looks like they finished 9-3 this year. And Tulane is one of those sneaky teams that has a chance. Every once in a while, we're talking about Tulane, and we're like, man, last year, I would say they were one of Ole Miss's best wins. They beat them. Ole Miss beat Tulane early in the season, and Tulane went on to have a great season, if I remember correctly, and it ended up being one of the better wins on their schedule. As a matter of fact, if there were a 12-team playoff last year, Ole Miss definitely would have made it. And part of the reason was some of those wins like Tulane early in the season turned out to be great wins at the end. So look, man, at the end of the day, this feels like a stepping stone. Like these schools that we're mentioning feel like stepping stone jobs. And I keep going back to, is UCF that end all be all job for a coach where you can get paid north of $5 or $6 million a year and want to stay there for 5 to 8 years?
I don't think so.
No?
Not yet. It's still a stepping stone school. They're still working on building resources and building facilities. They're not up to par with some of the more established power conference schools, but give them time. All the ingredients are there to build that, but it's going to take time, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, look. I mean, Sumrall has won more than most of the games he's coached as a head coach. The question always is, can what he does translate to a Power 4 level, right? And in your mind, do you think what he does translates to the Power 4 level?
I think so. I mean, think about this. Before Willie Fritz, came to Tulane, they weren't really much to talk about. And, sometimes it's hard to be the guy that follows the guy. And he's, they lost last week against Memphis, but before that, they were on the cusp of a CMP or CFP invite if they, won their conference championship. They were duking it out for one of that last at-large spot. But since they lost, that's no longer up for grabs. They would just need a miracle now to get ahead. But that's still you're potentially a 10-win season. Ranked in the top 25. That's still nothing to complain about. That's still a very he's developed a very strong program there in very short time, and I think he's going to be. Even if North Carolina doesn't get him, he's going to be a hot commodity elsewhere. And I think him above everyone else has the best chance of causing a bidding war.
Okay. So we got one more on the list, Andrew. Who is your third candidate here to possibly land this job?
My third, and the guy I've had him on my short list back in 2021 before Malzahn was hired, and that's Jamie Chadwell of Liberty. I was a fan of him back at Coastal Carolina. He did really well at Charleston Southern. Got a little bit of NCAA trouble, but you know what? He's kept his nose clean since, and has he wins wherever he goes. Now, sure, you got to take with a little bit of grain of salt the fact that Liberty did as well as they did last year with one of the weakest schedules you will ever find. But you know what? You play to win the game. And the head coach, in other sports, the head coach creates the schedule. That's not the case in football. The athletic director creates the schedule. So, I don't blame Jamie Chadwell for Liberty having the ultimate cupcake schedule. He played the game. He won the games. That's what matters. He's done it all. He's done it at multiple levels. So that's one reason why I'm confident, because it's not just a Johnny come lately. It's a guy who, coached at FCS level. One, he coached at a school that was just joining the FBS. One, and now he's joined. He's been doing it with the school that, they're Conference USA, they're a group of 5, but this is a school that rolls in the deep financially. Liberty is one of the most cash-rich schools out there.
Oh, okay.
People don't realize it. Kid you not, they offered Conference USA over $10 million to invite them in the last round of conference alignment. And because of who was running the school at the time, conference said, thanks, but no thanks. Those guys aren't there anymore. So then Liberty became a lot more of an attractive candidate, and they joined later. But he's also not going to come cheap. He signed a contract with Liberty, going into 2023. It averages about $4 million per year. It's a 7-year contract. So they're looking at $7-8 million of buyout to have to deal with to get Chadwell services. But you know what? They're going to make it happen if they want it bad enough. They didn't have to pay any money to Gus Malzahn because he left on his own. So they don't have to worry about being completely cash strapped on both ends. They just only have to worry about the front end of buying out Chadwell from Liberty. I like this pick. This is my favorite one. I had him on 2 lists, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I would be very thrilled to see him in black and gold next year.
Well, I'll tell you what, we got 3 candidates here. Which one is the front runner? You say you like Jamie Chadwell. We're going to talk about which one is the front runner right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. There are still games left to bet on. It's conference championship week. And if your team made the conference champion, or if you just got to scratch that itch and get a bet in, go visit our friends at FanDuel, Andrew. You're guaranteed $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Okay, let's recap. We got Ryan Silverfield, the current Memphis coach. We've got John Sumrall, the current Tulane coach. And we've got Jamie Chadwell, the current Liberty coach. And we want to know, Andrew, which one of these guys do you think is the most likely to win the job? I'm going to hit you with the drum roll. Brrr. That's a terrible drum roll, but
that's a terrible drum roll. Don't quit your day job. I'm going to pretend that didn't happen for your sake. And I'm going to go with the guy with the most conference championships behind his belt.
Okay.
4, and that's Jamie Chadwell, who has gotten 2
Winner.
at Southern, 1 at Coastal Carolina, 1 at Liberty, and has coached all the way down in as a head coach all the way down in Division II level. So you know what? He is my guy, my selection, and who knows what's going to happen over the next few days. National Signing Day is just around the corner, and while it's not as big of a deal as it used to be, the portal opens up officially next week. So UCF's going to want to start getting things in place. I know they're going to have a heck of a time trying to catch up. But you know what? We've already seen posted on Twitter a number of commits actually sticking out the commitment and not backing out of it, because a lot of players have finally started realizing you join a program, a school, not a coach, because coaches they're transient too, just like the players. And the players know, okay, if this doesn't work out, I can go elsewhere. The national letter of intent is going away. It's being replaced with a more like not an employment contract, but a financial agreement with a player. And once that house settlement becomes enforced, we'll start seeing that more. This is an exciting time for UCF. They're the first power conference school to flat out say, hey, we're absorbing our NIL collective. We're taking it in-house next year when the house settlement becomes finalized and executes. They're looking forward. And, I think that's what you have to do. Look forward. All these guys are coaches on the rise. So you're looking forward. Chadwell has had a meteoric rise from Division II through the FCS into FBS. And I think he's ready to go into the power conferences.
It's going to be interesting to see what direction they decide to go here. Now, you mentioned the money, and look, you mentioned Chadwell is possibly the most expensive option that UCF has at this moment of the guys that you think have a chance to get the job. Will money be a factor? Like, can UCF be outbid here for Chadwell services?
Well, here's the truth. Obviously, last year and this year, they worked on a reduced payout from the Big 12. And while they don't receive the money until the end of the academic year, they are set in 2025 to be, as the new media deal starts, to be full shares of the Big 12. They're going to be making over $30 million a year. This is a program that has worked on a much smaller budget from a media deal standpoint. So I think they can. They're working on realigning their line of credit with the school, which they expanded from $5 to $10 million when they joined the Big 12. They used that as part for their down payment. They could probably work something out with the school on a short-term loan that they'll be able to pay back. And Chadwell is also going to be expensive from an annual standpoint. He was offered in the range of $6 million and maybe even a little bit higher from Mississippi State, and he turned it down. He said he was going to stay at Liberty. I actually appreciate that, in the fact that he's looking for the right opportunity, and everything is right about the UCF opportunity. You're in a great recruiting, foothold in Florida. You still have the Southeast around you. You have one of the youngest alumni bases in the country. You have one of the largest enrollments in the country. There's just a lot of growth here. And you go to a lot of these schools do you want to be a part of history? Or at UCF, do you want to write history? And that has to be appealing for some of these up and coming coaches to say, hey, I want to be a part of writing the history, as opposed to just being a footnote somewhere. Scott Frost did it. Josh Heupel did it. Even George O'Leary on his way, at his last career stop, he had a chance to write history, and that was appealing to him. So I could see that being appealing to, in this case, a Jamie Chadwell, or even Silverfield and Sumrall, who are, coaches on the rise, of being able to write history as opposed to just being just another name in it.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think this is super fascinating, what direction UCF decides to go here. Look, you've got to make a good hire. You've got to make a good hire. Coaching search should be a once in maybe every 5 to 6 year event. The way to do that is to make good hires and hopefully have those guys build the program enough that UCF is somewhere where they decide to stay for a little while and not, take their successes to bigger programs immediately after they find those successes. Andrew, thank you so much for the information. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
You can catch me on Twitter /X/Blue Sky at StatBoyDrew. And you can catch my writing on Last Word on College Football, a part of the Last Word on Sports family.
Guys, do us a favor in the comments after the video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and drop us a comment. That helps us in the algorithm. That's it for another great edition of Locked On UCF with my guy, Andrew Glukov from the Last Word on Sports. Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our guy, Drake Toll, over at the Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. He's the guy for conference realignment news. He pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12. You can find him on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us back here tomorrow with more Locked On UCF.